Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Gallery Teachers Masterclass. Today, we are going to be looking at the topic of critical thinking and positive collaboration for teenage learners. Before we go any further, I would just like to introduce myself. So my name is Nikki Partridge. I have been working in the world of EFL as a teacher, as a trainer, as an exams expert, and as a manager for more than 20 years now. I am British. I am actually Welsh British, and I am located in Cardiff, which is the capital of Wales in the United Kingdom, which is where I have my language academy, Pear Tree Languages, which is accredited by the British Council for the teaching of English. And it really gives me great pleasure to be here with you today to talk about the very important skill of critical thinking, and also how we can start to develop this skill with our teenage learners. Now, of course, critical thinking is really a skill that we are always developing throughout our entire lives, and it's certainly not something that we can just tick a box as a teenager and say, yes, got it, critical thinking, done. And of course, it is a huge topic. And this is certainly not going to be an exhaustive lecture about critical thinking skills, which is a huge topic. This is more of an introduction of how you as teachers can start to develop these skills with your younger teen learners. Nevertheless, if you don't teach teenagers, or you teach teenagers and adults, then of course many of these skills can be applied to learners of all ages. And dare I say it, we might even think about whether or not we can apply one or two of these skills to ourselves. And in terms of positive collaboration, this for me really goes hand in hand when we talk about developing critical thinking with our students, because we must develop this positive collaboration culture. And again, we're going to be having a look at an introduction on how to do that in your classrooms, particularly teen classrooms. So what we're going to do on a step-by-step basis, first of all, we will take a look at a definition of what we actually mean by critical thinking and try to unpick these terms apart a little bit. Let's unpack them. We will do the same with positive collaboration. So exactly what do I mean when I say positive collaboration? Again, unpacking and unpicking some of these concepts so that we as educators have it very clear in our own minds before we start to pass on these skills to our learners. Safeguarding considerations. Now, when we are talking about any learner of any age, actually, we should always make sure we have robust safeguarding procedures in place. But of course, this is absolutely essential when we talk about younger learners. As teachers of young learners, I am sure we all believe that the number one priority in our classrooms has to be the safety. And as much as safety, I really want to say well-being of our younger learners. It's unlikely that in this topic we're going to get on to having to talk about the more extreme ends of safeguarding, which is obviously deeply unpleasant. What we're really thinking about here is more the welfare of our students, and how to make our youngsters feel comfortable enough so that they are in a space, a safe and comfortable space, so that they can start to develop these critical thinking skills. Okay, so we will be having a good look at safeguarding. I'm also going to try to give you some practical ideas for generating discussion topics that will then, of course, lead on to critical thinking skills being developed. These will be some ideas from many years of tried and tested schemes of work that we have developed at Pear Tree over the years as we've worked with younger learners and worked really hard on developing this kind of classroom atmosphere. So I'll be more than happy to share some of my ideas with you for discussion topics and safe topics. And last of all, I will talk a little bit about asynchronous platforms. to support collaboration and learning. Now, you may think synchronous, asynchronous, online, online. They're the buzzwords of online, which is true. However, what we have really seen here at Pear Tree is that really an asynchronous platform can do a really good job of underpinning a live course, a face-to-face course. And, you know, critical thinking is not necessarily something that you can turn on and off. Some people may feel able to think a bit more critically at different times of the day, maybe not when they're specifically in class. You know, very often we have our best ideas, right, when we're taking that long walk through the woods, when we're not actually in work. And it may well be the same with some of these critical thinking topics. So what we really want to do is we want to have a space where our learners can upload things, can share ideas that maybe isn't just restricted to within the classroom time, where they may not really be having their eureka moments. All right then, so we've got an action-packed agenda today, so let's move on to the next slide. Critical thinking, let's put a definition up there. Okay, I'll give 10, 20 seconds just to let you read this and absorb it. All right, so this is a definition that I found in the Cambridge Dictionary. Okay, a very, very standard definition of what critical thinking is. Okay, so it's a process. It's a process. Yeah, as I said, it's not something that will just happen overnight. It's not something that will necessarily happen at the moment when we want it to. But it's a process of thinking carefully and not allowing feelings or opinions to affect you. And I think as much as anything else, what we're really looking at here as educators is trying to start to develop a mindset within our students that will become a lifelong habit, okay? This is not something that we necessarily teach them to pass an exam, all right? This is not the same as saying, here's some exercises on the present perfect, go ahead and memorize all their uses and trot it out in an exam, okay? So we're really thinking about a skill that is, first of all, valid for everyone, regardless of their academic potential, which is something we'll have a look at in a moment. But really, we want to start to get this skill within people that they will just develop and turn into a habit with time, okay? So let's have a look at some of the features of critical thinking, okay? So we think critically when we address people, ideas, and situations with, and let's take a look. A few different ideas here, okay? So the first one is an open mind, okay? The next one is an analytical thought process. The third one, I think, is especially interesting and something that we will look at a little bit later as well, an understanding that we are not always right. Okay, so this is going to be something very key to try to get across to your learners, especially your younger learners, your teen learners that may have very, very strong ideas about things. And sometimes it can be about things that are incredibly innocent, like food, like, yes, of course, my country has the best food. My country has the best food in the world. This is obviously exactly here, an understanding that you're not always right. So trying to get across to people that they will need to be a little bit more open-minded in order for discussion to flow. Yep. So we're just trying to open those pathways a little bit. It's not straightforward. Okay, we need a willingness to communicate, a listening ear, and a creative approach to problem solving. And then finally, what we're really doing is we are trying to reach a conclusion based on evidence. Okay, so a conclusion or a decision based on evidence. And as I said in my little introduction, perhaps as educators, we do need a good moment of self-reflection, first of all, to see whether or not we tick all these boxes. And if we don't, which ones do we feel like we could work on a little bit? And I think the other very important thing that we need to keep in mind with this list is that we are going to be better at some than others. Some of these areas we may be far, far, far away from, we may need to work really, really hard on. Some people might find it very easy to have a listening ear, but more difficult, they might find it more difficult to communicate. They may not really be willing to. Some people might be very self-righteous and believe they are always right. And other people may be extremely open-minded, perhaps because of their background or situations that they've experienced. And we need to realize that this is not a list that we are going to be able to tick everyone off all at the same time, or possibly even ever. All right. Okay. So why is it important? So we've had a little look at what critical thinking is, some of the features of critical thinking. Why is this important? Why should we be teaching our students these skills? Well, I mean, really, we all need critical thinking in our lives. Okay, we all need it. First of all, it's an academic skill. So I am a teacher trainer. I'm also an exams expert. And one of the things that people struggle with, and I'm talking more about adults here, is generating ideas, critical thinking. And we've looked at this previously in some other workshops, which I would advise you to take a good look at. And really, critical thinking is something, and the generation of ideas is something that can be started much, much, much younger than at the age of 25. Okay, and it is a very, very important academic skill to be able to rationally come to a conclusion. However, this is not only for those students who might be in your classroom who are hoping to go on to an academic career in an English-speaking country, or even an academic career at all. This is a life skill, okay? This is a life skill. If you need to have a new bathroom installed, you will receive a range of different quotes. You will analyze those quotes. Okay, you will try to be open-minded about a various number of factors, and finally you will decide, you will choose the quote that is best for you and for your bathroom. This is critical thinking. All right, so the idea to think critically is a very important skill, and if we can give students the opportunity to develop this skill in English, then we're ticking a lot of boxes for them. Okay, so let's try to embed the critical thinking elements into our lessons. Okay, so we've talked quite a bit now about critical thinking and its features and why it's important to start to develop this skill, this mindset, so it becomes a habit in our teen learners for later in their lives. So let's move on to the features of positive collaboration. Okay, so we want our students to think critically. We want them to be open-minded, not to be too self-righteous. We want them to be able to speak to others. We want them to be willing to communicate. We want them to listen to their peers. However, in order to do this, we have to have the right environment. We have to have the right culture. We have to have a safe and collaborative and positive space in order to open up to those skills. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the features of positive collaboration. First and foremost, I believe the atmosphere has to be respectful, which is why it's really, really important if you do have students who tend to be, as I mentioned, very self-righteous, that they really believe that what they think or what they've been told by their family is the absolute truth. This is something that really will need to be worked on, because that can be quite intimidating for other people to express their own opinions, which might be different to this other person's. So it's all about generating a positive atmosphere of respect and making sure that respect for other people's beliefs or points of view is at the core of everything that is done. Secondly, to be non-judgmental. All right, so this goes along with the respect element of creating a positive culture, positive environment. And for us as teachers, okay, it has to be encouraging. So we have to be encouraging our students to speak their mind, to speak out, to state their opinions, their points of view. And we also need to encourage our students to encourage their peers. All right. So it's not just always top down, the teacher saying, oh, well done, that was great. And what do you think? And what do you think? No, we need to try to get towards an atmosphere where the one student knows that it's going to help everybody if they encourage the next student and if that student encourages the next student. Okay, so we're encouraging our students to encourage each other. And finally, but this is absolutely key, the space has to be safe. Okay, so it has to be a safe space for the students and, of course, for the teacher. Okay, how do we do this? So that's great. We want it to be respectful. We want to have a non-judgmental, safe space. Okay, but how do we actually do that? Well, let's try to create the positive atmosphere collaboratively. Okay, so again, rather than you coming along as the teacher and saying, these are your rules in this very, very top down kind of way, I want you to respect each other. I want you to encourage each other. Yeah. Rather than doing it like that, which is probably not going to be as effective as if you actually put the ball into the court of the students and say to them, well, what kind of atmosphere would you like to create in this class, in this space, when we're having these discussions? Okay. So you can actually tell them about the key features of critical thinking and positive collaboration, and then ask them to design a set of rules for the class discussion. So something as straightforward as a classroom contract. Okay, I've got a little example of one here, so that they actually feel that they have created these rules for themselves. All right. They are far more likely to stick to the rules if they feel that they have come up with those ideas by themselves, obviously guided by you as the teacher. So you will have an idea of what kind of rules you want them to create, and you will be guiding them in that kind of direction. And this is a creative thinking exercise in itself. Okay. So this is a very, very nice way of starting to develop this kind of culture. So while we're in this positive collaborative space and we're having these discussions on topics, which we will come to look at in a moment, so don't worry, what you really need to try to do is to see yourself like this lady, as an umpire, as a referee, as a facilitator. You are not a player. This lady is not actually playing tennis, but she's keeping a really good eye on everything that's going on. Okay. So to get the best possible flow of ideas and of interactions and willingness to communicate between your students, really, you need to step out. So you're certainly not nominating people to speak. Okay, you might put some time limits on things. You might say, okay, so now everybody in A group speaks, then everybody in B group speaks. You might have some little tactics, but you are not in the middle of it all. Okay, and you're certainly not telling people whether they are right or wrong. Okay, and you're certainly not specifically reprimanding people unless, of course, they break rules, which is exactly what this lady, the umpire referee, is doing here. She will get involved in the game when people are breaking the rules. Okay, so you should be encouraging your students to see the gray and avoiding words like right and wrong. Okay, so again, let's not forget, this is an English language class after all, so which is why we're going fairly light on a lot of the ideas behind critical thinking, because really all of this is also an excuse, a very important excuse, to speak some English. So try to avoid people using words like right or wrong. You could even give them little penalties, yeah, if they use you are right or you are wrong or I am right or I am wrong or she is wrong. Okay, to try to encourage them to see the gray in any argument. So as I mentioned, you allow the play to flow and you only interrupt if the rules are being broken, okay? But you must be alert at all times and be very ready to show the red card, maybe literally a red card. You might even have a little system of cards, a bit like a football referee. In the case of any forceful projection of opinions or disrespectful behavior, okay, which absolutely must be stamped out as soon as it happens, because if you remember, one of our features, our most important features of creating the positive collaboration culture is that the space has to be safe, okay? Comfort is the key, and that's your job. So comfort, by that we mean comfort of the students. The more comfortable the students feel, the more likely they will be to really engage in the discussion and therefore really start to develop their own critical thinking skills. Okay, so we've talked now about critical thinking and what it means. We've talked about the positive collaboration culture. So let's talk about safeguarding, because it's obviously impossible to have any sort of conversation, especially on topics relating to critical thinking, without considering safeguarding. So for me, the most important thing here is that we set very, very clear expectations. So on the one hand, of course, we want a lot of the rules about the positive culture to come from the students themselves, because if it comes from the students themselves, they're more likely to stick to it. However, it is also absolutely key that you have very, very robust policies in place, procedures, and that the expectations are clearly mapped out before you start any course or before you start embedding critical thinking into your course. So unacceptable conduct has to be formally identified to parents and guardians in advance. Because of course, if a student has some unacceptable conduct, their parents may not think that it's unacceptable. And then you could have some kind of issue where if you haven't spelt this out very clearly in an application form with terms and conditions that they've signed about things like forceful projection of opinions, then it will be very, very difficult later on. These rules have to be really clearly communicated in a pre-course information pack, or you can use a little video clip and you can upload them to a private YouTube channel. So this is something that we started to do a few years ago, which was to start to make little short video clips that people can watch with their parents, just a couple of minutes long, with some very simple do's and don'ts, how we expect people to behave, the kind of topics we might be talking about in the classes, the kind of behavior that we expect in the classes, what we will do, what our rule-breaking system is from the point of view of the management, in little friendly clips that students watch with their parents. And this is a very, very good way of getting the information over in a friendly way. And finally, when we come on to talk about the asynchronous contributions, which we will be doing in a moment, it's extremely important that those channels are moderated. So you're not using any kind of asynchronous platform where the students can have direct contact with each other, which isn't moderated first by somebody official, like a teacher or an academic manager or program coordinator. Okay. Finally, you should encourage whistleblowing. Okay, so if somebody is not comfortable, if something is happening that shouldn't be happening, you should be encouraging your students to tell somebody. And finally, you have to be alert. Okay, alert at all times that people's well-being is your number one priority. All right, great. So let's get on and have a look at a few ideas for generating lesson topics, because you might have just watched all of the rest of this presentation and gone, oh my word alive, how on earth am I going to come up with a topic that just looks like an absolute minefield? Okay, yes, it might look like a minefield. However, let's take a look at, first of all, a few of the things you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about how to choose topics, okay? And again, this doesn't have to be a whole lesson. This could just be little bits peppered throughout the lesson or throughout the curriculum. The first thing you need to keep in mind is what is an age-appropriate topic. Okay, so I'm not just thinking about it from a safeguarding point of view here. I'm thinking that a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old don't necessarily want to discuss the same things. The same topics might not be appropriate. If there are elements of your discussion, critical thinking lessons that involve doing something outside the classroom, going around taking photos, putting together a little project with real items that they pick up from around, then you might not be able to do that with an 11-year-old because they're just too young. Okay, absolutely, 100%. Do not court any controversy. Okay, so try to avoid controversy. So do not choose any topics that are based on religion or politics. Okay, these are absolute no-go areas. Okay, if this is a recipe for disaster, and of course with teenagers, they are not adults. And it can be very, very problematic. So what we do is we choose lifestyle-based topics, things like healthy eating, the use of technology and how it's changed, whether that's good or whether that's bad, okay? Local environment concerns. So things that they might want to change in their local area, things relating to their school, things that they like or they don't like about their school, which can then go into a wider topic about education. And also online safeguarding. So this is a staying safe online, basically. So this is, again, a really nice way of actually, through a critical thinking topic, you will actually get them sort of making their own rules to a potential problem, in this case, staying safe online. If you're in an international context, as we are very often at Pear Tree with our international junior camps, then you must not assume any cultural knowledge, okay? Don't assume that everybody knows who Elvis Presley is. They don't, okay? Don't assume anything. Don't assume that everybody knows who Picasso is, because many, many people from many, many countries don't. So you have to really be careful that you don't assume any cultural knowledge, which is again why topics such as healthy eating, everybody's got to eat. So healthy eating is a great topic, yeah? Environmental concerns, but not at a government level, okay, which could start to become potentially problematic or controversial. Environmental concerns in your town, in your village, okay? And then people will talk about things like recycling if they have it or if they don't, or maybe there's a polluted river in their village that used to be a beautiful brook, okay? So these are the sorts of things that will come out, and they're very, very valid topics, all right? But don't assume any cultural knowledge. And if gaps do occur, then they can be great opportunities for peer teaching. All right, so one student telling another student about their own culture in English. And also ask your students to contribute suggestions. All right, so you maybe in a little suggestions box, maybe through an asynchronous platform, you can ask them to contribute their own suggestions. Okay. All right, and then so you've got all these suggestions, you're managing to start these discussions, you've got some topics in mind, you say, okay, I know what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to develop their open-mindedness, I'm trying to develop their listening ear, their willingness to communicate, I want everybody to feel safe and positive and respecting each other. Let's put in some practical classroom activities. Well, you can do things like this, generating ideas, collating ideas through word showers or mind maps, which is also a great life skill. Plenty of things that you can do, developing different kinds of visual mind maps, okay? Word clouds, there are some pieces of software online where you can generate word clouds for free. Infographics, again, some very, very nice things online, such as Canva, which I know many people are using these days, where you can develop infographics for free, or the students can do it, in fact. You can ask them to upload a video, a meme, ask them to make a meme. This is a great idea, an audio file, or they can make comments on your chosen social media platform, which we'll be having a look at in a moment. Or finally, you could get them to produce their ideas, to present their ideas via a short presentation. This is very often the way that we end our short courses at Pear Tree, through a short presentation. And if you really, really need more inspiration for new topics, then there is no better place to look than the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. So I've got the links there. They have, there are these goals that have now been developed, and it's a fantastic sort of coat hook to put some of your critical thinking ideas for discussion onto. Remembering, of course, things like age appropriateness, whether you have an international class, etc. So some of the other things that we've looked at. And if you really still need some help thinking, okay, so healthy eating is great, but I'm still struggling a little bit here to see how I can develop a lesson. Well, we have this fantastic publication from the British Council, which has 208 pages of information about how to actually incorporate these global issues into the English language classroom, with lots of lesson ideas and plans and all sorts of great stuff there. And I really, really recommend it. I am a particular big fan of Nick Peachy, and we will put the links to this at the end of the forum. Okay, so this is an amazing resource to get started and a really interesting read. Okay, and just to finish off, I hope I've got 1 or 2 more minutes here just to be able to mention the role of asynchronous platforms, even in the face-to-face classroom, okay? So whether you are doing these types of critical thinking, discussion groups, picking apart topics online or face-to-face, because a lot of this, I would say pretty much all of it is just as applicable to the online classroom as it is to the face-to-face classroom. Okay, a lot of these things can be done in exactly the same way. It's a great idea to have an asynchronous platform to support the critical thinking process, because as I said right at the very beginning, your eureka moment, your aha moment may not actually come to you in class. The class may be a place to pass on information, start to gather ideas, start to collate ideas, swap some initial ideas. But the true thinking, the true thinking will probably be done that evening when somebody is walking their dog, okay? Or when they are having their dinner, or when they're speaking to their parents about what they just did in the class that day. And at that point, it would be fantastic for there to be an asynchronous platform where people can still be sharing ideas even outside of the lessons. So what do I recommend to do that? I recommend Edmodo, I recommend Padlet, and I recommend Canva. So Canva, I mentioned earlier, which is a great tool for making infographics or any other kind of graphic design, basically. Padlet is a fantastic collaborative tool where you can organize ideas either in columns as maps, you can have contributors, and it's a fantastically easy way to get all of the ideas together. And then Edmodo works a little bit more like a sort of a Facebook, where people can upload videos, comment on each other's posts, which you can also do on Padlet as well. But Edmodo looks and feels a little bit more like Facebook, for example. Okay. What I don't recommend are these: Google Drive, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Now, I use all of these tools in my teaching and in my training of people of different levels. I have Facebook groups with some of my learners. I have WhatsApp groups with some of my other learners who really like to learn through comedy sketches. We're always uploading comedy sketches to WhatsApp, but these people are an adult group, an adult private group. We use Google Drive here at the school. We use Google Drive with all of our adult students for their records. However, I wouldn't use any of those three with teens because they cannot be moderated, or they're very, very difficult to moderate, okay? Whereas with something like Edmodo or Padlet, you can set them so that before anything is uploaded, it has to be moderated by somebody in the middle. So it's going to be, for example, the teacher or the program coordinator or the academic manager. Okay, so that means that there isn't the possibility that they can be used for inappropriate content, online bullying, or any of these other more nefarious uses. All right. Also, they all have free versions. Okay, so like most online learning tools, There's a free version, there's a paid version, and I think Edmodo, Padlet, mainly Canva, the free version is still very good. Okay, but just one thing to point out with the asynchronous platforms. First of all, you have to make sure that it can be approved before it can be made public, which I've already mentioned, but also set expectations about how frequently this content will be moderated. Now, if we're talking about teenagers, they will most likely be using things like TikTok, Instagram, other types of platforms where the interaction is instantaneous. Yeah, they post something, they get a reply, they see a post, they're posting something. It's all very, very quick. It's very, very, very fast. And obviously, you as the teacher of the class, or as the program coordinator, academic manager, or whoever is responsible for moderating the content is not going to be on Edmodo or Padlet all the time, checking and getting notifications and, oh yeah, it's moderating. You might have to actually work this into the scheme of work, into the syllabus. Teachers may request to be paid for this this kind of moderating, which is because it really is a task. So you may have specific hours set aside for doing this, which is absolutely fine. Just make sure your students know that whatever they upload during the week, it's not moderated until Thursday evening, or it's moderated on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So from the beginning, their expectations are very clear, because otherwise their expectation will be, I posted something on Edmodo, why is it not on Edmodo now? And then they'll start to think, oh, Edmodo is no good. And you will lose them before they've even really started. But if they realize it's not being moderated that quickly, they say, oh, no, it's fine. It'll be moderated on Thursday, and they won't fall out of love with it before they've even started. Okay, everybody. So a few useful resources here. So we've got the Gallery Teachers Workshop Library, which has a tremendous amount of fantastic information. Also here, you have the link for the UN Sustainable Goals, the publication on how to use those sustainable goals in your teaching, and also a little bit more info from Nick Peachy and his website there, which has lots of ideas for creating for creating discussion topics in a more digital age. So the profile of students that critical thinking is important for is really a very interesting question, because really what we're talking about here is not so much a skill as a mindset that we want to develop into a lifelong habit. And in fact, critical thinking is a necessary mindset, habit, skill for everyone of all ages. Okay, perhaps not little children, but certainly from teenagers through to adults. This is an extremely important skill. So the short answer is it's very valid for everyone. Ensuring a culture and atmosphere of positive collaboration in the online classroom is really extremely important. I mean, it's always important in the face-to-face classroom and in the online classroom. But really, what we need to do is we need to set and manage expectations from the get-go, from the beginning, and then we need to follow that up with really robust procedures and checking, and teachers who are trained, who are alert, and who really have the best interests and the well-being of the students at the heart of everything that they do. And wherever possible, we try to get as many aspects of the positive culture emerging from the students themselves, rather than having a very top-down approach. And this is just as applicable in the online classroom as it is in the face-to-face classroom.